think by the time you're 5 years old, you in beginning classes, preschool actually, and then your formative years up until 7, the age of reason, when you can understand the Eucharist and the liturgy of the church and our faith and the importance of the most important relationship you have is that with God. And Christ conquered death. Why would you be afraid of death? It is merely just as you were born with great labor into this world, sometimes that can involve tremendous labor as you transition to your eternal life. And that, it's all about how you respond. How you respond, knowing truth and having faith and developing your purity and your trust, and most of all, love. And that everything is in that mystery which we, in our limited understanding of life, some of us have broad perspectives. I think she had such a tremendous gift of intellect that she was gifted to understand deeply and broadly God's bigger picture, a broader, deeper perspective. And so when she's cutting people off at the knees, she gets it. She's seeing things and not getting, it's almost like saying, stop your pettiness, stop what you're doing, think about what you're doing, be careful in what you say. It's like once out of the mouth, can't get it back in. I don't think that she would regret, anything that she said, really, because it was well measured and thought out for the moment, the circumstance. Regina was that way, but Regina was uniquely, wonderfully, I think, the very best version of herself. Flannery was different and even, I'm sure, challenged Regina from the time she came into the world, And the conversations at our house, listening to my parents, to Lewis, to Mary Flannery, to Regina, asking questions such as, have you read such and such? Is it any good? And they'd go, oh my gosh, Regina, yes, it's outstanding, it's amazing, and even conversations about marketing, because women would write short stories and take advantage of Reader's Digest, and here she was going to put a collection together, and the great marketing tool she had in her name alone to drop Mary. Who knew that Flannery, just in the public, would recognize it as a woman? And as you brought out too, and no one writes like Flannery. Well, she was an incredible storyteller. She was a wonderful conversationalist, but she could make things so fantastic. So many of the things she wrote about, I'm sure had I been older, I would have known most of the stories, but many of them, we all know the characters. They were right there.
Right in front of us.
She was, yes, they were things that happened in our crazy everyday life. It was just, she could recognize the refusal of grace, the lack of acknowledgement, the ability when you're getting too close, oh my goodness, stop. Just stop, take a deep breath. You have the ability to change all of history in that moment. You're about to do yourself in, and darn it, isn't that the way humanity is? We just create terrible situations.
What are some examples of the characters that you saw in the community that showed up in some
Well, you can think
stories?
about, I'm not going to say names.
That's fine.
We all know them. I'll give characters. I'm not going to go pick stories or novels apart. But we definitely know who the farmer, the landowner, was, and we can see Regina and managing a farm and who a character might be. You can think of the immigrants, the Maticheks, who are still in Milledgeville, 3 generations now. But the difficult time in getting started, helping manage Andalusia and the bizarre things. I can remember when there was a family going to Florida who were massacred, and how suddenly weaving into a story is conversation about, oh, we don't want to travel. Well, everybody in Milledgeville, that's all they could talk about. Oh, I don't know if you want to take a trip, because you might get shot up or killed, or, it's not safe. Yeah, it's, or the farmer, he would have been less than 3 miles down the road from us. If our farm goes a mile or more down the highway 441, Ted Dunn had a bull. Everybody talked about it. Even Regina and Flannery would talk about it. Everybody talked about it.
Yeah.
They'd come, and within every community you have sub-communities.
Yeah.
So though Mom was teaching at Georgia College and on the junior college level at GMC, they had their own little sub-community. You had lots of professors, even from Harvard, all of these connected relationships there. But you come out removed to the farm, the country. Oh, well, Regina and Flannery were part of that sub-community because everybody was concerned about, livestock and animals, and we all knew one another, and how crazy he was to think that he could control that bull and allow that bull into the yard, and that, he was going to show him that, I'm in charge. And darn it, the bull bored him to death. The bull finally was in charge.
So that's green.
So the Greenleaf comes. It happens to be a woman, not a man, but you know the whole story. But of course, she made it so fantastic that it captures the reader's attention all the way through to the end. And when I was a young reader, even in college, I thought, oh, this is way too violent. I couldn't tolerate these dark stories. What were Mom and Dad thinking, that this was just marvelous? And then as life became more and more eventful and I matured, then it's like I catch myself reading and just laughing. I can see it coming. But I never see the horrific end that Flannery presents. But,
I can't read any of Flannery's short stories without, which I tried this morning on the way down, without getting tickled. Everything, she had a way of writing everything, no matter how dark, no matter how serious it might appear to be the subject from any other perspective. The way she wrote makes me feel light and on the verge of laughing, though.
I know.
It's all
just
life
happening, unfolding. and especially in Middle Georgia and in the Bible Belt, and to think, and I know she was a bad speller, but she wrote, Georgia had 13 dialects. I don't know that I think we've lost that because of such influx of population due to
and TV,
retiring and TV
radio,
but job opportunities, and the way she wrote, spelling phonetically, you can hear the voices and the different cultures, which represents, for those that knew it, it gave a sense of place, and you understood by the way they spoke, by the way she spelled or wrote their language, where they came from. You know.
Do you think that has to do with how she spoke as well? What do you remember about how she
was just
spoke?
Southern. Regina may have been Southern, but not with Flannery's draw. But she had a gentle voice.
She writes about in some of her essays about Southern Gothic thing, the dark, the brooding, the comically, mysteriously twisted, confused, the Erskine Caldwell streak where everybody's perverted, dying of syphilis, or sleeping with their brother, or
those things went on.
Yeah, they did, and so there's an awful lot of perversion and confusion in her literature, of course, and some of it was a direct. You can know a way to put it, a direct attack on the religiosity of her times. She mercilessly belittles the people who know the Bible inside out and backwards and can quote it chapter and verse, but can't live it. Just a friend of mine and I were talking about the dangers of falling into that, which I think anybody who loves the Bible as much as I do has a great danger of becoming the expert at the expense of living the central message of the Bible. And but she absolutely mercilessly and beautifully and accurately portrays the damnation of life that comes out of that. Not the you can't get into heaven with it, but the distorted, twisted, ugly thing that it does to your life to become a person that knows everything and can't live it. It's terrible. It's frightening. But for her, it wasn't frightening. That's grace too. Mm-hmm. That's grace too. Mm-hmm. She doesn't despise these people. We idiots like me despise these people. That's what I learned under that oak tree. I despise the people she makes fun of until I realize she's making fun of everybody. We're all taking ourselves too seriously, and we're not doing the simple things we can do right here and now to make life a little better, like tuck the handkerchief under.
Yeah, and I think people. I know that when I was on the Flannery O'Connor boards, there was a writer that wanted to be invited from the Caribbean and very popular out of New York and the U.S. And he was thinking he could read her prejudice. She had no prejudice. She used this as a platform, especially in her station in life at that moment in history. How could she affect change? She could expose what was happening.
Exactly.
You have to remember Flannery even coming to our farm. Regina would sit in the back seat, proper for a lady of her station. You think of Katie Sims, cousin Katie she had an electric car. She tore down the house in between because, pardon me, but you can't park and go in the front door. Heaven forbid you go in the back door where the servants would come in. So she created a space. Regina sat in the back seat, and Flannery would sit up front, right there with Joe Butts. His ancestry was African American, and they'd have a conversation. And then she'd get out, and Joe he could open up for Regina, but Flannery would get out herself,
Yeah.
Didn't call it women's lib or get caught in the semantics of anything. It was just, this is life, this is real, excuse me, I'm capable. Until she needed help, there were times, finally got to be a time when we would run out to the car just to see her, But no, they exposed so much. They had the Hills that lived right there, and I don't know how much help any of these people really were. Schott was an alcoholic, and he was their primary maintenance guy, but he was usually drunk, And if they needed dentistry, well, once all the other patients had been seen, then Mary Flannery and Regina and sometimes Mr. and Ms. Hill would all come in, and Nelligans would be there because Schott would be drunk. But he had an abscess, and you'd have all kinds of people holding him down so that he wouldn't kill Dad with the instruments, And I could remember it would go on for months. Every time they'd visit, now Regina, before you leave, promise me you will not bring him back drunk. I've got a family to support. I cannot risk damage to my extremities. I cannot risk my life, but it was all pretty comical. But there was no prejudice when they were there to always try to help those that were
it's the male, sorry.
Well, she didn't, you get the sense
living and working there together. And Mary Flannery would, if they needed things done at Andalusia. I can remember Mary Flannery coming out in Lewis's khakis. Oh, the belt didn't work, so she had a scarf tied around the belt loops and a shirt. And there was Miss Regina going, Pat, what do you think of this? Look at her, the way she's dressed. And he went, what have you been doing today, Mary Flannery? And she went, oh, well, I went out to dig and work in such and such, and, why? Regina thinks that I should be doing it in a dress, I imagine. And, he went, no. And Mama then, of course, here we are, the early 60s, in her pencil, cute little pants or trousers, pencil leg and little blouse or something. I think you look wonderful. Oh, that's marvelous. It's actually a good fit. I didn't realize you could wear Lewis's clothes. And, and they would, she was just very practical about that. And I thought that was great. But they would talk about everything from Elohim. Regina even came one time specifically, it was after dark, to tell us that Mary Flannery had her short stories translated into 11 languages. What did you think of that? Or Joe would bring her to say she received this award, or whatever. But
sounds like Regina was proud of her.
She was very proud of her.
Sure.
And she never would have tried to dampen. She would. I don't know if she ever did it. She said she would have to lock Mary Flannery in her room for the 5 hours, because it did not matter if she put anything down, but she needed to try. She had an obligation to develop and use her gift, and by George, don't call it writer's block. You go in there and you write, and then you can have the rest of the day. We'll have lunch and you can socialize, however, write correspondence, whatever. But Regina was adamant about Flannery using whatever gift God gave her, period.
Well, I was going to say earlier, I think the fact that she couldn't spell worth a damn, or appeared to be the person who couldn't spell worth a damn, got in her way. That, earlier in her career, they wouldn't, teachers that didn't think much of Flannery O'Connor as an English student until she got to, I think, the whole career at the Women's College of Georgia, nobody thought highly of her. She went to Iowa to the writers' workshop out there, and of course, Giroux spotted her immediately from not for what she said. He couldn't understand a word she was saying, but he got her to write it down and got it to give him some of the short stories she was. And he didn't care about the spelling. He realized what we're talking about, this absolutely unique, brilliant ability to portray without judgment, without condemnation, the most terrible kinds of things. She, the Misfit, I reread The Misfit not long ago, and I mean, the Good Man is hard to find, and The Misfit is probably the most terrible character I've ever read about in my life. And cold blood murders a family. To him, she is just another example of God's grace. He's not somebody to be horrified about any more than I am. And he's a human being who has his own damnation, as all of us do. But she doesn't despise him. She doesn't look down at him. She doesn't pity him. She's simply portraying one more of God's children. At least that's the feeling I get. And that kind of inability to be prejudiced goes way beyond liberal and conservative. It's a capacity to see with eyes I've never been able to have. I'd like to have them, but
I think
be
she
able
had
to see things whole, not
a sense of humanity that was
right.
ahead of her time in a lot of ways.
Well, not just ahead of her time. I think ahead of her species. I don't know anybody who's lived up to that. There was a fellow named Joe Moore, who was a minister of the gospel in this very time, and a mortician who had the same sensibility, and he was a Baptist.